Welcome to this special edition of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. It's been a few weeks since my Kickstarter campaign ended, so I thought it was a good time to do a wrap-up. I'm basically just going to run through all of my thoughts, good, bad, and ugly, all my thoughts on the Kickstarter campaign and kind of wrap things up here. I've broken this wrap-up into a few different sections, so hopefully it'll kind of make sense. The first section is things that surprised me. So I think the biggest surprise I had doing the Kickstarter campaign was just the very positive and great reaction that I got from people. I got lots and lots of emails from people sending me just well wishes, people just sending nice emails in, and that was all great. It's very supportive, and it really did make the thing, you know, there were some low moments where I didn't think I was going to make it through. And so getting these well wishes really was nice. All these emails, dozens of emails, if not hundreds of emails coming in. I only had 2 negative emails. One of them was sort of light negative, and one of them was I would say, incredibly negative. I did see some people unsubscribing to my email list, so, you know, there definitely were some people that probably got a little sick of it. But for the most part, I just, the overwhelmingly positive reaction to the Kickstarter campaign, it was appreciated, and it was a little bit surprising. I was worried that I might annoy people. I mean, at the end of the day, basically with a Kickstarter campaign, you're just out there begging for money. So I just thought that this might rub people the wrong way. But as I said, overwhelmingly, people were very, very positive. So thank you to everyone who did send in well wishes. And as I said, I was a little worried about it, but it seemed to work out okay. The other big surprise, and I've mentioned this before in some of the campaign update podcasts that I did, I really did connect with, you know, my audience like never before. As I said, I got a lot of emails from people. I just got to know a lot of people who, you know, maybe listen to the podcast and for whatever reason have never actually reached out to me, never actually emailed me. So for whatever reason, this was it had a sort of a community feel, and lots of people just reached out to me, just, as I said, just well wishes. Hey man, I heard about your Kickstarter campaign. Good luck with it. And, you know, there were some other people that have their own podcasts, and, you know, so I got to meet them, you know, through email. There was a lot of people who, different crew positions emailed me, you know, just people volunteering to help out with the shoot. So that was all just great stuff. And as I said, I hadn't really thought about it. It was kind of a surprise because I hadn't really thought that through. But I got a lot of people. I think there's probably at least 5 people who have said, hey, I'd love to just help out on the shoot. You know, I'm willing to do it for free. And, you know, that's the kind of, you know, effort that it's going to take to get a movie, a micro budget feature film made. So again, surprising. And, you know, it was a positive, definitely a big thing that surprised me, but it was awesome. I definitely was surprised, and that how stuck I was at basically around the $5,500 or the 50% mark, which was around $5,500. I guess I was trying to raise $12,000, so I guess $6,000 would have been the 50% mark. But I pretty much got stuck at $5,500, and that was a little bit worrying. I honestly didn't think, as I said, I pretty much got to that 5,500 after the first week, and I honestly didn't think I was going to make it after that, because those middle 2 weeks, I didn't a few contributions came in, but I was pretty much like after the end of the first week, I was at 5,500. At the end of the second week, I was still right around 5,500, and at the end of the third week, I was still pretty much at 5,500. So that was obviously a little bit worrisome, and I definitely had read a post about how most of your money comes in the beginning and the end, but I just was not prepared for that. I thought I would be able to at least slowly push it up. And then once I got down, I think it was like those final 8-9 days, that last week, all of a sudden things definitely picked up. And again, I don't know why this was so surprising to me, but I felt like I was not quite prepared for it, even though I had read that this was going to happen, that you're going to get a lot at the beginning and a lot at the end. Once I turned that corner after that final Sunday, like on that Monday, things all of a sudden started to click. And once I got close to the mark too, once I got up to like that 8,000, 9,000, it just seemed like it sort of started to fuel itself. The other thing that surprised me, and I don't know why this surprised me, but I didn't read about this anywhere, and it just didn't occur to me. Maybe it should have occurred to me, but people can reduce their pledges and they can cancel their pledges. And of course they can. Of course, that's a reasonable thing for them to be able to do. And, there's no hard feelings for the people that did. But that was one of the issues. I got to that 5,500 after the first week, and then I had a couple of the big contributors that had contributed $300. I had a few of them actually just say, forget it, and they canceled their contribution. So I did get a few contributions in weeks number 2 and 3, but I lost a few too. So I was pretty much stagnant at the 5,500. And again, I think just be prepared for that and realize that, even though they've contributed, they can back off. Again, I don't know why that didn't occur to me, but it was definitely, it definitely was something that I had just not thought of. And I don't know if you noticed too, if you go back and listen to my podcast episodes, specifically what seemed to be the biggest problem was I gave away that story consultant credit for $300. And if you listen to the podcast, I was close to getting, I think I was only giving away 10 of them. And at one point I got up to like 7 or 8 of them. And then, as I said, I had a bunch. And so I even announced on the podcast, hey, there's only a couple of these left. And when I was recording the podcast, there was only a couple of those left. But as it turned out, a bunch of those people ended up canceling their pledges. And, so then I got down. I think I ended up only giving out 6 of those story consultant credits in the end. But I think at one point I was to 8. So I think I lost at least 2 of those, maybe 3 of those. So again, people can change their levels, and so be prepared for that. That was something that did surprise me, and you can kind of take a couple of steps back. I mean, some days I literally went down. I did not go up. So the other thing that surprised me, and again, this kind of goes into all this other stuff that I just mentioned, were definitely the emotional ups and downs. As I said, after the first 6 days, I was pretty much stuck. I think by that Sunday, I launched the campaign on Monday. I think by the end of day Sunday, so it was just 6 days in, I think I hit that $5,500 mark, which was pretty close to the 50% mark. And at that point, I remember thinking, gee, this is going to be easy. I should have tried to raise more. And then, as I said, it pretty much flatlined. I got a bunch of hits where people were basically canceling their contributions. And so things actually went down a little bit. So that was a big surprise. And it was surprising to me how much of an emotional roller coaster it was. I mean, as I said, after on that Sunday, I thought, man, this is going to be easy. And then through that first week, it was kind of a little bit of a low point. I actually reverted and went down. I think I actually went below the $5,000 mark by like that Wednesday or Thursday. I got up to 5,500. And then by that Wednesday or Thursday, I was back down to like less than 5,000. So it was there was a lot of ups and downs. As I said at the sort of the beginning of this section, I did get a lot of emails from people with well wishes, and so that kind of spurred me on and kept me going and kept me positive. But I after the first after the first couple of weeks in going into the third week and stuff, I really did not think I was going to make it. As I said, I was feeling pretty bad about the experience. But as I said, luckily it did work out. But as I said, one of the big surprises was how much came in towards the end. A lot of bigger contributions. I think there was a couple of people that just found me through Kickstarter. And I think there must be people that, they look for projects that are going to get funded. And because once I hit that like $9,500, $10,000 mark, all of a sudden, and I ended up getting to like 14.5. So just in the last like maybe 4 days, I probably raised another like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So a lot of the money came that final few days. And there was a couple of people. There was one person I know of for sure. He contributed $500, got the executive producer credit, and he was just some random person that found me on Kickstarter. And I think that there is some of that. Once you get close to your goal, all of a sudden people are like, hey, he's going to make it. Let's chip in a little bit of money. So again, it was definitely a wild ride, a lot of ups and a lot of downs. So I would say, again, be prepared for that if you're going to do it. Again, I want to thank everybody who did send in the well wishes, because those really did keep me going. There was a lot of people who didn't contribute any money, but they just sent me positive emails, and I thank those people too. I mean, those were appreciated. I know everybody's financial situation is different, and sometimes you're just not in a position to contribute to something like this, and that's totally fine. A lot of those people did send me emails, said, hey, I can't contribute, but I do wish you well. And I got a lot of those emails, and those were very, very nice to have. So thank you, folks, for that. So I just want to touch on a couple of things that I think I did really well. And then I'm going to talk about some of the things that I would do differently, things that I didn't do that well and that I would do differently next time. So in this section, as I said, it's things that I think I did well. And this is, again, just my opinion, but I think there were some things. Obviously, I did hit my goal. In fact, I mean, my goal was 12,000. I ended up at about 14.5. So I exceeded my goal. And that was all, just great. And I guess that's part of it. That will be part of what I actually come in and talk about in terms of sort of how I set this up. So things that I think I did well. One of the first things is obviously building an audience. I mean, I've been running Selling Your Screenplay, I think since like 2009, 2010. So that's, 6 years. I've been slowly building an audience through Selling Your Screenplay. I've been doing the podcast now for well over, I think, 2.5 years, or right around 2.5 years. So I've been building up an audience, and I think that's absolutely crucial to something like that. If you're just going to rely on friends and family, I think you need to really temper your expectations. And I didn't pick up, as I said, that I think there was one person that I know of that contributed $500. But for the most part, the people that contributed the money are people that know me now. Maybe they don't know me in person, but they know me through my podcast. So by and large, I would say spend some time, whether that be a year or 2 years, trying to build an audience, find an audience of people and build it. Because you're going to have a hard time if you just get into something like this and you don't already have that audience built. I talked about the Kickstarter campaign on my podcast. I think I started talking about it last August just to try and build interest. And again, that was by design. That was some article that I read said, let your audience know, really talk it up. And, so I just kept my audience through the podcast sort of abreast of what I was doing. I talked about shooting the teaser trailer. I talked about, just setting up the Kickstarter campaign. So I talked about it for several months. So at least some of my audience, I mean, I suppose there's people that probably follow the blog, don't necessarily listen to the podcast, but at least the people who listen to the podcast were well aware that I was going to be doing a Kickstarter campaign. And I think that was a good thing. I think I did a pretty good job of that, just prepping and kind of talking about it and building some interest in it. I was pretty happy with the teaser trailer that I did. I think I did a pretty good job on that. I mean, I think my sound was clear. I think it looked reasonably professional, and I did it really with just some friends. There was, I didn't spend really any money. I think all total was probably less than $200. I gave some of the actors a little gas money. I bought some lunch, and I paid a sound guy $100 to go and do the sound. You can hear in the actual teaser part, the 1-minute teaser part, you can hear some sort of sound effects and music effects and stuff. So I paid $100 for that, as I said, a little gas money, and then I bought the guy's pizza. So well less than $200 is what I actually spent. My buddy Adam Strange, who runs the writers group that I'm in, he actually had all the video equipment, and he knew obviously how to shoot stuff. He had sound equipment. He had the camera, so he came out just as a favor to me and shot it. So again, I think that's getting some of these pieces in place is a smart idea. I obviously had that. The actors too were from my writers group. I talk about my writers group quite often on this podcast. So, participating in these types of things on a regular basis. I mean, the two actors that came, I wouldn't say I'm great friends with them, but I know them pretty well. I've known them over the course of, probably a couple of years. They're actors in the writers group. They come in and they, when the writers present their pages, these are some of the actors that read the pages. So, I see them, almost on a weekly basis. And I think, again, going into something like a Kickstarter campaign, laying some groundwork and having some of those things in place is crucial. I think the other thing I did, I mean, you never know. You're always kind of second guessing yourself. I think I did a good job setting a reasonable goal that I could actually hit. I mentioned this once before. The way I came up with that $12,000, I mean, I basically figured, as I said, I had $15,000, basically committed for this project. And so I basically figured, if I can, so basically my budget or I figured what my budget would be $25,000. I would shoot my feature film for $25,000. So then I figured, okay, I'll go for $12,000 on Kickstarter. And then Kickstarter takes their fees. And then I figured I'd be left with, roughly of the $12,000, I would be left with over $10,000, and that would get me to the $25,000 that I need to shoot this thing. And so that was kind of part of my thinking. But the other part of it was at first I was thinking, well, I'll just go for an even 10,000, and that will get me straight up. And, I knew there were some Kickstarter fees. But then, as I said, I read an article and it basically said some loose math is if 6% of your audience gives you $20, is that enough to get to your your goal. And so what I did was just did some math. As I said, I have about 12, I have about, let's just say 10,000 to make the math easy. I have about 10,000 people on my Selling Your Screenplay email list. And so just doing the math on that, I think, I also have Twitter, I also have Facebook, and, obviously the podcast goes out and people listen to it. But I just figured that was some simple math. And I think, screenwriters, I think as a group are typically interesting and cool, but they're not always people that have a lot of expendable money. So they're, starving artists in a lot of cases. So, I think maybe looking at your audience and being a little bit on the conservative side. But if you do the math on that, basically 10,000 people, 6% of that is, 600, and then times $20 for 600 comes to 12,000. So that was the other way I kind of backed into that. And I think that was actually pretty accurate. Of the $14,500 that I ended up raising, 11,000 of it was from the Selling Your Screenplay audience. And again, you can't tell, it's hard to tell precisely inside of the Kickstarter Kickstarter interface. Obviously, you're never going to tell exactly where people are coming from, but I would say roughly looking at sort of what I did, I just sort of eyeballed it and went through it. And I think, as I said, around 11,000. So it was a little short of my $12,000 sort of math equation, but, I was very happy with that. And so again, thank you to the audience of Selling Your Screenplay. And then, of course, obviously I relied on, friends and family to maybe go a little further. But I think it's important that you set your goal. And I think it's important you set a realistic goal. And I think I did. Like, I don't feel like, gee, maybe if, because obviously I went over the 12,000, but I don't sit here and think, well, gee, maybe I should have done 15,000 or, 20,000 or something. It was nip and tuck whether I was actually going to make it. So that's the other thing. So I think I did pretty good. And as I said, by my calculation, about $11,000 was raised from the Selling Your Screenplay audience. And, that was pretty much roughly what I had anticipated. So the other thing that I think I did really well was I had a system in place to sort of disseminate my content, and that's namely this podcast that you're listening to now. I've spent, again, this is part of maybe building your audience, but I knew very quickly, and this is probably something I didn't do that well, but once I got into it, I knew very quickly that, okay, if I can produce an extra podcast episode per week, I know I'll get some people listening to it. I know how to get that out to a pretty large audience already because I'm doing it with my podcast. So I was able to just basically plug into that and do all the things that I do for my weekly podcast, which is, I record the podcast episode and then I publish it on YouTube. I publish it I send an email to my email list, and I post it on my blog, I tweet about it, and I post it on my Facebook, the Selling Your Screenplay Facebook page. So I had those assets built and with some audience in place. So that's probably a two-part equation. I had built my audience, but that's kind of like the general thing. Well, yeah, I built my audience, but then I also had these sort of very well-used, well-oiled machine for actually disseminating the content. So I think I did a pretty good job with that. So now let's talk about some of the things that I'd say probably I did poorly and things that I would do differently the next time. So one thing I would definitely do next time is the way Kickstarter kind of breaks down. When you go to start searching for projects, they have a section that's like we recommend or something, and the only way you can get on that is if you get a badge from the Kickstarter, people who run Kickstarter, that says Project We Love, and they put like a little blue icon on you, and like I would look at like the recommended projects or something, and every single one of them would have this blue icon. And I did a quick Google search. I was already like headlong into this thing when I figured this out. So, but I did a little Google search, like, well, how do you get that? And it was just as easy as just emailing, whatever it is, support@kickstarter.com, or there was some specific email address. I don't remember what it was, but you just email them and pitch your project to them. And, it might have taken me 20, 30 minutes to write up a short little pitch of why I thought they should recommend my project. And maybe they would have said, no, we're not going to give you that. But I think for the 20 minutes that it would have taken me to do, I would definitely do that differently, because I think getting a little more exposure can only help. And that seems like for the amount of time it would have taken, I think that would have been worth doing. I would definitely do it next time. And I would definitely recommend that you spend the time just writing up a little pitch and then, as I said, emailing whatever the email address is. So I would say the biggest mistake that I made, and I would definitely do it differently next time, was just planning out more content. As I said, once I got into the campaign, I quickly realized that the biggest like leverage thing I could do probably was create a extra podcast episode, since I knew I had this ability to quickly disseminate that information, again, through YouTube, through my blog, through my email list. I knew that I could get this podcast episode out quickly, and so that's what I did. But I knew, like, on that Friday before I launched, all of a sudden it dawned on me. I'm like, what would be really smart would be to create a new piece of content every single day of the campaign. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Like creating a podcast episode, it takes me, a few hours at least, the better part of like half a day to actually produce it and get it out, edit it and get it out. So it's not like I just didn't have time to do a new podcast episode every single day, nor would have I had anything to say every single day. But you could do some cool things. You could write articles. You could have like an announcement of a special giveaway. Hey, I'm going to give a new reward, and you could tweet about that new reward. So you could have some little piece of content every single day. And I think you would be real wise to plan that out, and myself included, I would be wise to plan that out. If I did another one of these, just sit down with a calendar and try and think of some cool thing that you can tweet about, post on your Facebook page, post on your blog, send to the other backers, the people who have already backed your project, just something you can push out to that's unique every day, just to kind of keep people thinking about it. And I also think, and this goes into my next sort of point, I would also clear more of my schedule to promote the Kickstarter campaign. I had a couple of websites that, other people that run screenwriting websites that I email with, or, just network with, just kind of know, because I have a screenwriting website, they have a screenwriting website. And I had a couple of those people say, hey, well, write a blog post for my website, and then you can pitch your Kickstarter campaign on it. And I just did not have time. So this kind of goes back to my first point: planning out content, writing some articles in advance for some of these other blogs that would have been happy to do it. I think I could have actually built sort of a story, told a story in those 30 days. Like, okay, I'm starting now. Okay, here's where I am now, and kind of just told a story. And then, I would have been able to pull some people from these other websites if I had written, let's say I'd written 4 articles for this other website, or even just 2 articles, maybe the beginning and then sort of one at the end, 2 articles for this website. It might have been enough to get some continuity and actually pull people from people that didn't know me at the beginning of the 30 days. If I produced enough content, then by the end of the 30 days, maybe I would have pulled them in sort of to my sphere, and maybe they would have started to listen to my podcast. I mean, that could have had other advantages to selling your screenplay as a business. Just getting those people sort of into my sphere would have been a good thing. But again, I just did not have time, and so I would clear more of my schedule if I did another one of these just so I could produce that content and kind of stay on top of it. I mean, I have a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, I'm writing scripts. Obviously, I'm running Selling Your Screenplay. I've got a bunch of other websites that I'm running. I have family obligations. I have 2 young children. So, and I know a lot of people are in this same situation. So just the day-to-day stuff gets a little bit overwhelming when you're also trying to run this Kickstarter campaign. So I think next time I would definitely try and block out my schedule a little bit better. But I don't know, sometimes it's just unavoidable. And so maybe you just got to suck it up. But I don't know, that was definitely one thought I had going through it. So another thing that I would say, and this is sort of goes into maybe not something I did poorly, but something I've been thinking about that I might do differently, was I was just trying to figure out, would I use Kickstarter as a platform? I might do a crowdfunding campaign again, but would I use Kickstarter as a platform? And I don't have a good answer right now. Again, down the road, maybe I'll come up with a better answer. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The reward system is a little bit clunky. It's especially with the way I kind of ended just putting in a ton of different rewards. It's kind of difficult to just connect with all the people and like as an example, they have a link that says like download, you know, the backers information. So you click on it, you download the zip file, and then you open it up, and each reward has its own you know, Excel spreadsheet in there with your email. So you got to like click through these. Like if you want to basically collect everybody's email address who contributed, you've got to like click through each Excel spreadsheet and copy and paste them into another Excel spreadsheet. So it's a little bit clunky that way. I don't quite know why they do it. Today, I was just starting to go through and start to fulfill some of the rewards, and it's like they have this thing where it's surveys. I've got to go through and do it. I haven't actually done it yet, but it's like the surveys seem to only pertain to run one reward level. And as an example, every person that contributed to my campaign at the $50 level or above for any of the rewards, I'm going to give them the digital download, and I'm going to give them the an actual physical hard copy of the DVD. So it would be nice to send so I have to collect their physical address information. So instead of having to do like 10 surveys, it would be nice to just do one survey at the above $50 level. But Kickstarter, it doesn't seem like they allow you to do that. So the other thing was, obviously, they take a pretty big fee. So I ended up raising $14,500. The money just got transferred to my account yesterday, and it looks like there's, let me make sure I get this straight. It's 13,000, I think about 300. So it's about $1,200 that Kickstarter took out of the 14,500 total. So, you know, it's not quite 10%. You could do the math on that, you know, but I think it's probably like over 8%, maybe not 9%, somewhere in that 8 to 9% range. So that's a sizable chunk of money. I mean, it is. And so I did a little search, you know, just for like WordPress plugins. WordPress is what I run the Selling Your Screenplay blog on. If you have a blog, you probably use WordPress as well. It's just the software that runs, powers most blogs on the internet. So I did a search to see if there was like a crowdfunding plugin that you could get for WordPress, and there were some. I didn't investigate, but you could definitely run something yourself. So it occurred to me, you know, and then you wouldn't lose the 10%. You would get people to pay you through credit card or PayPal, but that's typically like a 3% fee, not like an 8 or 9% fee. So you could definitely step outside the Kickstarter system and run it. But however, I do think that Kickstarter adds some credibility. And, you know, for instance, I think having the deadline helps. If you did something self-hosted, and to be clear, you know, I'm just kind of like, I'm still mulling this over. I don't have like a definitive answer, and we'll see, you know, maybe in a couple of years once this film is done and I decide to do another Kickstarter campaign, you know, the proof is in the pudding. We'll see if I actually use Kickstarter again. So this is a work in progress. I don't want to make it seem like I have a definitive answer right now of what I think. I'm just sort of throwing things out there, and these are sort of my thoughts of where I'm at right now. But if you did a self-hosted crowdfunding campaign on your blog, you know, the deadline would be incredibly arbitrary. Like there'd be no reason why you couldn't just extend the deadline. If you're hosting it yourself, you have the power to extend your deadline. So I do think, as an example, I do think the deadline of the Kickstarter campaign did help. As I said, that last week, money really did start to come in quickly. And if you're hosting it yourself on your own blog, it's going to look very strange and arbitrary. And there's no reason why you couldn't extend it. So the deadline is not going to feel as real. Obviously, with Kickstarter, once I set that deadline, people understand the rules, and there's no way in the Kickstarter system you can go and extend your deadline. So I do think the deadline added pressure. It added pressure to myself. It added pressure to the people, you know, who were contributing. And so that's a big plus. So that's a big plus to the Kickstarter campaign. The other thing is it does, to me anyways, it feels more legitimate on Kickstarter. You know, whether it is or is not, I don't know, maybe for someone like myself, where people kind of listen to my podcast, maybe I've built up that level of trust, but it definitely seems like it's a little bit weird if you just self-hosting it and people are just giving you PayPal contributions. It just doesn't seem like it would feel quite as legitimate. As I said, of the $14,500, I do know that at least $500 of it was contributed through someone who found me on the Kickstarter platform. So there is that as well. I mean, if you're self-hosting it, you're definitely not going to get that kind of a things. one thing, and maybe I should have put this in the surprised section. One thing that I did realize, I've run a bunch of e-commerce sites over the years, and so I know sort of about bad credit cards and credit cards going bad and not working and that kind of stuff. And so one thing that going into this that I was worried about was Kickstarter does not charge the credit card until the campaign is successful and ends. So that's like maybe, I ended on 5 o'clock. I think there were actually some people that told me that they saw that Kickstarter charged them almost immediately. So they saw those credit card charges go through. But the bottom line is those credit card charges don't go through until your campaign is ended and has been successful. So there's people who contribute at the beginning of the month, and I was worried that, they might get their credit card might just get canceled. I mean, I don't know about you, but like my credit card company is at least once a year or so, they just send me a new credit card out of the blue and say, oh yeah, your other credit card might have been hacked, so we're giving you a new number and a new card. And I frankly find it kind of annoying, but there's a certain percentage of those people that I knew where the credit cards were not going to go through. So I was worried that, there would be a significant percentage, I don't know, 10%. I was just worried that there'd be a significant percentage of credit cards that did not end up going through. And to Kickstarter's credit, they did a really good job with this. One of my friends, actually, his credit card did exactly that. It did go bad during the time period, and so Kickstarter sent out the email to him, hey, you got to update your credit card, and of course he did, and it went through. But the other thing is in the Kickstarter interface, you can look at how many of these backers, their credit cards didn't go through. And again, I was very worried about it at first, but in the end, it was only ended up being 3 contributors and a grand total dollar-wise of only $30. So of the $14,500, a very insignificant portion. So that was actually excellent. And again, I give credit to Kickstarter for managing that. And I can see it, how many didn't go through. And then they also did a good job following up with the people and sending emails. So again, that would be another reason potentially to use Kickstarter. Okay, so those are the things that I would do differently. And now I'm just going to list off a couple of tips. These are just things that I think if someone came to me and asked, and I guess, the things that I did well, I think those are also some tips for some people. But here's just some sort of random tips that I think I would give some people. I would definitely do lots and lots of different rewards. I mean, if you go and look at all the rewards I offered, by the end of it, there had to have been like maybe 20 or 25 different rewards that I was offering. And almost all of them got at least like 1 or 2 person to contribute at that level. And so I think it's important that you give as much diversity to the rewards, because the rewards really do entice people to contribute. Obviously, some people do want to help you out and they don't even want a reward. But I found for the most part, people were very interested in the reward. And if you listen to these Kickstarter campaign updates that I did, if you go back and listen to them, or if you've already listened to them, you'll know I realized that very early. And so I just constantly was rolling out new rewards throughout the campaign. So I would definitely do that. I also think, again, going back to this idea of being able to create new content every single day, I also think, setting up your Kickstarter campaign, and this is kind of what I ended up doing, but it wasn't by design. I kind of just stumbled through it. I had sort of a list of what I thought were cool rewards, but then as we went through, I just started unloading them as quickly as I could throughout the campaign. But I think that was a good thing, and I would recommend doing that. I would recommend not necessarily doing what I did, in the sense that I was just, trying to cook these things up and think of these things during the campaign. I would think it through before you start, but I would also definitely hold back some of your rewards. Don't give out all your rewards the first day. Hold a few of them back, because that will give you just a little ammunition as you're going through it. The other big piece of advice I would give is, just do it, is, it's going through the process. Like, now that I've just done a Kickstarter campaign, am I an expert at Kickstarter? No, but I have a much better, you go from like not understanding it at all, even if you read how to do it and blah, 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 until you've actually done it. It's, I'd feel a lot more confident, let's put it to you that way, going in and doing this again. So I really highly recommend it. Even if you just set a goal of $500, you want to go out and shoot a short film, set a goal of $500, do a Kickstarter campaign, just go to your friends and family and just see if you can raise a little bit of money to just go do a short film. if you think Kickstarter is something you want to learn about and potentially maybe do a feature film down the road, I would say just do it. Just get out there and just do it, because all these things I'm talking about are things that you are going to face firsthand. And no matter how much I explain them to you, or how many questions you asked, or how many blog articles on running Kickstarter campaigns you read, until you've been through it yourself, it's hard to really sort of fathom it. And like anything in life, the more you do it, the better you get. So I would really encourage people to try this out if they're thinking that Kickstarter might be a model. And again, set a really modest goal of just a few $100s and just go do a short film. It's like maybe just $300, maybe just $200. Just set a goal of $200 and just see if you can raise some money. And maybe that just pays for food. You can shoot a short film on your iPhone, and you need some money for a location and some food for a one-day shoot. And you'd be surprised how much you'll learn, even if it's just something, a monetary amount that's ridiculously low. The other big tip I would give is have some backers in reserve to get over the hump. And what I mean by this is, there's going to be some very close family and friends that you tell beforehand and that are going to contribute. Like they're your good friends, they're your good family members that you're very close to. And I did this as well. I had some people going into that last week. I had a couple people in reserve that I knew were going to make big contributions, and I said, okay, go contribute now. And that was sort of at the beginning of that final run. And it's hard to tell what would have happened if I hadn't done that. But it's once things started to heat up, it really seemed to fuel itself. So I would really recommend that, is having a couple of people to kind of get you over that hump. And that hump to me seems to be like that, from 50% funded to, like, let's say 75% funded. So, try and get to that 50% funding mark on your own, and then have these people in reserve. Hopefully they can give you a little more and get you to maybe the 70%. And then all of a sudden people will start to see, hey, this guy's going to actually make it. And that might heat things up a little bit. So it gives you a boost when you most need it. And so definitely think about having some good friends and family that you can really count on contributing, to strategically use them. So the other tip that was given to me, I did not do it. So again, maybe this goes in the things I would do better, but it was an excellent tip, is find other Kickstarter campaigns that are similar to yours in sort of scope. In my case, I'm doing a film. I was trying to raise basically a $25,000 micro budget film. I'm trying to raise $12,000. So, maybe I could have found some other Kickstarter campaigns that were having similar success, and we could have cross-pollinated. I could have gone to them and said, hey, I'm doing this Kickstarter campaign. Can you promote it to your audience? Because everybody that, everyone who's contributed to your campaign is in the Kickstarter system. They know how it works. So no, they're not all going to contribute to some random other Kickstarter campaign that I come and recommend. But I definitely think you could pick up a few. And if you did this with, 4 or 5 other projects, and obviously you want to vet this, you're going to know your audience. You're going to know the people who are contributing to your campaign. So find other projects that are similar in scope and, and that you think are really cool. That's something you really genuinely would recommend to your friends. And then, promote it to your, because in the Kickstarter interface, there's very easy ways to just like contact everyone, send a message to all your backers. And so you could find some of these other Kickstarter campaigns, maybe kick them $10 or $20 and send them a message and say, hey, I saw your campaign. It looks really cool. I'm running this campaign. Any interest in potentially cross-pollinating our audiences, and just see what you can get. That was a tip given to me. Again, I didn't try it. I just never quite had time to do the legwork. Obviously, you want to recommend projects that you think do look good and would be similar to yours, so that your audience would be in line with that. So that's pretty much my tips. So I guess overall, my sort of feeling on Kickstarter campaigns, I think it was a very positive experience. Obviously, I made my goal, so that definitely probably impacts that a lot. I probably wouldn't feel nearly as good about it if I hadn't. But I would say even if it had just completely failed, there were some significant upside to it, and that made it worth it. Again, really the networking and connecting to my audience like never before. So I definitely think overall it's definitely positive, and I would definitely be open to running another one. Obviously, I'm not going to run anytime soon. I've got to actually go and produce this movie. So, but in a year or 2 years, 3 years down the road, I would definitely consider doing it, assuming this movie turns out well and people seem to like it. I would definitely consider going back and doing another Kickstarter campaign. So again, I think it was definitely worthwhile, and it was a positive experience. So that's it. That's my Kickstarter roundup. I've actually started to move into pre-production, so I'm starting to crew up right now. The plan as of right now, and I think I've said this on the podcast, I was like, hey, we're going to shoot in May or June. The plan now is to shoot in July, and it's a moving target, so who knows? It might go up, it might go back a little bit, but that's the plan. So I'm recording this in early March, and so I've got a few months to kind of get the movie ready. I've got quite a bit to do as the writer-director, and also we're going to be one of the producers. I'm going to start doing a rewrite on the script here in the next couple days, and then I'm going to also do a shot list. And as I said, I'm starting to crew up. I'm starting to put feelers out to get crew members. One of the guys I networked with, he actually contacted me. He kicked in a few bucks on the Kickstarter campaign and actually emailed me. He listens to my podcast, and he emailed me. He had done a Kickstarter campaign. He is a cinematographer in New Zealand, so I've been talking with him about him maybe possibly coming on to shoot the film. He's a professional videographer in New Zealand, so that'd be great. But that's just a good example of the kinds of people you can potentially meet in a Kickstarter campaign like this. So yeah, I'm crewing up and just getting ready to start going for a July shoot. Again, I really appreciate everyone who came along for this journey with me. I will continue to update. I'm probably not going to do any special episodes, at least not in the near term, any special podcast episodes where I just talk about the project. But I definitely will be talking about the project now that it's in pre-production. I'll be talking about it every week on the podcast and keeping everyone up to date. But again, I just really appreciate all the support. As I said, that was really the greatest thing, the greatest part of the Kickstarter campaign was just getting the well wishes and seeing how supportive everybody was. So thank you, everybody who did contribute. Anyway, that's it. I really appreciate your listening to this podcast episode. Thank you.